Alrighty then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I do not know if any of you have noticed, but the company Jaguar has recently updated their logo, and it reminded me of some things, so I'm going to rant about the Star Wars website for a little bit. So, for the first little bit of background information you need to know, Jaguar's release video was very short. It had no speech, only a couple of words, and then the reveal of the new logo. I will post a still of it so that you get the general vibes. They do not change. However, we do not care about the video in here. We care about the actual logo. So this logo change follows a very long pattern of more than just this industry of changing logos to be what can only be described as a brutalist. Not minimalist. Minimalist is a broader subset. Brutalist is basically minimalist to the extreme. And a significant number of companies have been doing this, Star Wars included. So for the second bit of background information you need to know, I'm going to give you two pictures, one of brutalist architecture, which you will see right now, and one of minimalist architecture, which you will see right now. Now, to go back to the brutalist architecture, if you take a look at this, these buildings are all brutalist. They have zero modifications. Not a single thing is present that is not absolutely required for the functioning of the building. Now, to go back to the minimalist picture, as you can see, this building has frills that are definitely not beneficial to the structure or square footage of this particular building, but also don't really serve any other purpose. There are very few of them. They do not have many frills. This is what minimalist structure looks like. So to go back to the Jaguar logo, you can see on the old version, it was just the word with a Jaguar over top. Very minimalist, a little bit of frills, but nothing too much. And then our new logo is just the word Jaguar. You cannot declare that you are Jaguar with anything less than just this. This is brutalist logo. Now let us make our jump over to the Star Wars website. As you can see over here in the various frames you will see, I've got 3 of them, you have various advertisements of the various shows. What I would like to direct your attention to is everything else, also known as the things that basically don't exist. When you look at the top, everything, black and white. When you look at the sides, everything, black and white. You cannot have a background that references stars using anything less than this. This is the bare minimum capability, and nothing else is present. Again, this is brutalism in the form of a website. To be a little bit more granular, if you look up here at the top, you will see that there are logos for various companies that are not Star Wars. They are all in the white on black. Fine, you want those to kind of blend in. But then you look at the Star Wars logo itself. It also blends into the website by virtue of not sticking out. Why would you do that with your own logo? This is the StarWars.com website. People should know you are on StarWars.com website. It should not be blending in to the background. Now, to go to the part that I consider the most egregious of all of these, is the timeline of the various movies and films, which also includes video games for some reason. I'm not decking that there's video games there, but why include video games and nothing else? Doesn't make sense. Anyways, as you can see, particularly at the top here, we're going to go over the Old Republic, where it has just a description of what is going on, which is the Old Republic is founded among the worlds of the Galactic Core, and the Jedi Order emerges to protect it. A schism within the Jedi leads to the creation of the Sith in this epic era. And also, Disney refuses to touch it with a 10-foot pole. However, in here, you have an underline under the Jedi Order. That is called a hyperlink. You can click on that, go to the definition of the Jedi Order. It's its own page, it has various things in it. But what is relevant is that in there is the actual definition of the Jedi Order. Now, why is it that in the StarWars.com website, controlled by one of the most powerful organizations in arguably the world, is this not a tooltip? Again, this is a defining feature between minimalism and brutalism. If this were a minimalist website, it would still have the Jedi Order underlined, but when you hovered over it, it would pop up and tell you what the Jedi Order was. If you need a link here to tell people what the Jedi Order is, give them the definition right here. But no, this is the brutalist version of a website. It doesn't exist as a tooltip because that isn't absolutely necessary to the function of this website. If you need to know what the Jedi Order is, you can go to the page for the Jedi Order. Now, let's go to the Wayback Machine, which does exist on the internet. We're going to go all the way back in time to the grand old time of 2011. And guess what? We are going to stay on the same website. So, obviously, some of the images kind of don't get recorded in the Wayback Machine, but as you can see in this particular screenshot, the Star Wars logo itself stands out. Way up at the top of the screen, in that title card, the thing that does not blend into anything else is the 2 words Star Wars. You know which website you're on just by having a screenshot of the page. Next up, if you go down, if you look at the various little undercards that are there and having present and additional data, they are their own boxes. It is blatantly clear where they start, where they end. This is minimalist. This has a couple of extra frills to ensure you understand what you're looking at, to draw your eye to certain positions. But also, it doesn't have a whole lot extra. Now, that's not to say I don't think there was a lot extra. If I remember at this point in time, people were still putting like extremely garish backgrounds, which we just don't see here. But if we go to a different screenshot over in the Clone Wars page, that one did actually have its background recorded, which, as you can see, is a little screenshot of Ahsoka in a cage. There's not a whole lot, you don't see very much, but if you're in Star Wars at this time, you know who this is, you know what the TV show is, because, again, you're on the Clone Wars TV page. It doesn't do much, it doesn't particularly tell you very much information, but it's something else to be present. It's something to provide you an additional visual appeal apart from anything else on this screen. It isn't an advertisement, it's just a background. And again, it takes effort to actually make this particular screenshot. Dots on a page, no. Now, to give you one final piece of information here, there is, from Legends, or the EU, if you call it properly, a giant timeline of everything that has occurred in the EU. You should be seeing it now. And it is absolutely minimalist and potentially brutalist. And in this one action, I would say in the EU's defense, this was originally created and posted when you saw it on the inside of paperback and hardback books. You would buy a book and you would say, what else do I want to read? And in there would be the names of other books and their locations in the timeline. You could identify by year what was happening where in the galaxy. Well, maybe not so much where, but you knew when it was happening. Now let's go back to the timeline on the present-day StarWars.com website. As you take a look at it, you can go eras, they go top down, left to right. I really only know this by knowing where most of this stuff goes and knowing that it is in fact left to right chronological order. But if you were not aware of this, would you be able to determine that? You could assume it, but was it obvious? No, it's an assumption. Why not provide that information? If you are not already aware of this timeline, you do not know the difference in time between the Phantom Menace and the Attack of the Clones or the Revenge of the Sith just by looking at this. You don't know if the Clone Wars TV show takes place closer to Attack of the Clones or closer to the Revenge of the Sith. Now, honestly, the Clone Wars TV show takes place across the entire span, but you have no way of knowing that. You can't take a look and say, oh, Jedi Fallen Order, where is that, relatively speaking, to Solo? Is it close to Solo? Is it far from Solo? You don't know. To go back to the book timeline, you can tell, because it is marked by year, how far, roughly speaking, various events are from each other. So, to wrap all of this up, to put it all into a nice, neat little bow, why is this happening? And in my personal opinion, it is due to fear. Star Wars under George Lucas had events coming out every year, not just part of the year, constantly. You don't get a timeline like that EU timeline by sitting and doing nothing. Sure, there weren't movies for long stretches of time, but there was constantly books and video games coming out all of the time, and they would sell constantly. Tons of books, tons of games, always. But what about today? Modern Star Wars doesn't come out with things as regularly as the EU used to. And worse yet, many of those projects are not well received. So when you go into the Star Wars website and you see a very simple structure, it's difficult to delve in and find all of the nitty-gritty little details. There's so little actually present in the website that you can't investigate and find trash. It looks cleaner than it is. In other words, the website is using simplicity to hide poor craftsmanship. In my opinion, this is a dereliction of duty to have a website this egregious. Star Wars is a property you are supposed to be immersed in, and I believe it is absolute mismanagement of the highest order to allow this website to exist as it does. This should be grounds for removal. But that's just my opinion. Y'all have a good night.